Welcome back to everyone at Tubbs at the Club. This is Tubbs After Dark, aka one of my Tubbs shorts that which we're going to be publishing just periodically throughout the football season, probably at least once a week. But like it's just going to be dependent on what's going on, and what's going on today in Vandal football is it's 11:20 p.m. Pacific time. I just got back in Coeur d'Alene because I drove down to watch the University of Idaho's second, aka final scrimmage of fall camp. Last time we're going to see scrimmage action before. I mean, honestly, the game's August 30th. WSU already, man. Which is not even the point of this episode. We'll talk about WSU later, and we'll talk with Trevin Junt from Lewiston Tribune on Thursday at 6:45 Pacific time this week. But WSU, man, they're not even naming a quarterback for the Idaho game. They're shutting down some of their public availability at practice. WSU is scared. Idaho is not. So look, we're here to talk the takeaways, but hey, support the show, patreon.com/Tubbs at the Club to join the hashtag Only Tubbs Discord, the best place in the world to talk Vandal sports online. Also, I dropped some periodic observations from the scrimmage there. That's where, when we have our updates, tips, that's where we drop them. But anyway, enough with the preamble. So, hey, what happened in Moscow? Really interesting scrimmage. And I got to sit with Trevor Junt from the Lewiston Tribune and talk a little bit. Got to see the interviews with the coaches and Joshua Wood. And hey, it's Joshua Wood, not Josh. His mom gave him 3 syllables. We're supposed to use all 3 of them. So the story of this scrimmage was the defense. Kind of. The defense clearly won this scrimmage. I'll talk takeaways. But this scrimmage, I noticed this. I felt I understood this on my own, but Thomas Ford also acknowledged this during his media availability afterward, which you can see those interviews on the Idaho Athletics YouTube page. This scrimmage was not about getting the clearly defined ones on the roster more and more run. This was about probably helping sort a little bit of depth pieces, but also some of the younger guys, as we hit the season, they're going to be scout teams. So it was to get them more reps for what's going to be their role as well. But that didn't mean there weren't some really interesting takeaways. And the first one I'm going to bring up is one of the takeaways I had from his practice is really it's an odd observation of the absence of something. Some of the definitive ones either sat out kind of as a precaution, not a ton, or they only played a few series and then just didn't really come back. So some of the names that sat out this practice, who, according to Thomas Ford in his interview after practice, none of these guys are necessarily, some guys sat out as precautions. Some guys might be what you call day to day. So, again, precaution. But none of these guys are, to our knowledge, injured in a way where we're not going to see them. Nate Azaparty did not play. Junior, aka Lanyana Alexander, Nate Thomas, Michael Graves, Sam Brown, and Julian Lee did not play. There may have been a few more guys, but those names I picked out off the top. So I'm going to start at quarterback because it's the brain dead easiest thing to talk about, but it matters absolutely. So 2 huge stories from the scrimmage. One, just watching Joshua Wood. Now, hey, he did throw a pick 6 to Jamel Blendman. So spoiler alert, we don't like those. The interception was on his deepest pass, and it was a clear mistake. But Joshua Wood, in the time that he played, he made me a believer. First off, Joshua Wood is going to add a running dimension Idaho has absolutely not had at all in the last 3 years, which, hey, those are the good 3 years, right? Even when Giovanni McCoy could run, he ran to extend plays, but Jason Eck wasn't calling a bunch of designed runs for Giovanni McCoy. We're going to see designed runs for Joshua Wood. He does not run as a way to, extend or augment plays. He is going to be a weapon on the ground. He is going to, on the ground, be a problem for a lot of Big Sky defenses. He's quick. He's strong. Now, Martin has previously talked about seeing option plays called for Joshua Wood. He did not have an option play called during this practice. Sawyer Teeney, who we'll talk about in a second, he did. which to me that looked like, okay, that's a Joshua Wood play that they're calling for Teeny right now. But on the ground, man, Wood is good. He is as good as advertised from what I saw, which that's not a shock, right? When he was at Fresno State last season, he played pretty much every game. He only played in one game really as a passer. The rest of the time he was called in, he was running the ball. So look, we knew he could do that because Joshua Wood did that at a higher classification of football back in 2024. And hey, in the comment section, Xander Eccles, glad you enjoyed the scrimmage. Looking forward to WSU. Xander, absolutely. And by the way, hey, long snapping, completely on point. There's nothing to talk about long snapping really in this review, Xander, because everything was done exactly as it needs to be. For further quarterback points, so Joshua Wood, what he did well, he has a rocket of an arm for intermediate and short throws. So some of the plays that Wood had some successful passes, they look quite reminiscent of a lot of what we would have seen last season from Jack Lane. And difference being, and I'm not trying to obsess about comparison from last year, but that's the most recent team, right? And we knew Jack Lane was good. Wood looks like he's very accurate on those short and intermediate passes. Intermediate meaning like 15-ish up to like 15-ish yards, a little bit further. Very accurate, and his man, he throws lasers on those passes. Now on his deep ball, look, hey, the pass itself was just inaccurate, but also it just looked like he didn't have as much on it as he wanted on the pick he threw. Woods at Idaho, not Fresno State. So, just from this limited sample size, I'm going to guess that means, hey, going over the top of the defense is less of Joshua Wood's strength, but being able to run the ball, being able to hit those intermediate passes across the middle or towards the sideline, Wood was great at those. The other quarterback takeaway is who the number 2 quarterback on the team is. And Thomas Ford, if you watch the practice, it was quite obvious who the quarterback of the number 2 team was. But Coach Thomas Ford confirmed it in the interview after practice. The number 2 quarterback is not Nick Josephick. It is not Jack Wagner. It is walk-on freshman Sawyer Teeny from, sorry, dude, I got to look at my roster real quick, from Silverton, Oregon. He just joined the team during fall camp, and what we saw to Teeny, couple turnovers, but hey, remember the story we're going to get to is the defense definitely won the day today. But Teeny's he has a very strong arm, stronger arm than than Josephick for sure, and he just looked more accurate than Wagner. And I honestly, like, leaving the practice, so Josephick didn't have the turnovers with the threes that Teeny had. Now, Teeny threw one pick. He also had a complete pass, which was then fumbled. So that's not his turnover. But the offense looked like it moved a little bit better with Teeny. His arm is definitely better, and he's been with the team for like 15 minutes. So I completely get why that's the number 2 quarterback. Also, the option play, which was successfully executed by Teeny. But I think that's a dynamic Martin had talked to us about previously. That's just going to be part of the offense. We saw with him. So kind of big quarterback news, both at the 1 and 2 spot. Now, some other takeaways. These are kind of like takeaways in their absence, because some of these guys, they just played a few series and they were done for the day. So with the ones, we saw, relative to the amount of plays called, a pretty good percentage of 12 personnel running 2 tight ends, and those clear number 1A, 1-2 tight ends, however you want to count it. Jake Cox from Idaho, he was on the team last season, and Gabe Hoffman, transfer from Eastern Michigan. He is clearly going to get starters minutes at tight end, and it's interesting because I feel like Hoffman's the guy Eck would have just murdered to have on the roster last year, because he adds some flexibility to Idaho, both as a pass catcher and the guy's huge. So as a blocker, he's going to be absolutely fine in Big Sky play. So those are 2 tight ends. Wide receiver, it looks like Ford in the interview afterwards said there's kind of 4 guys vying for maybe being the top target, but no single guy has emerged as like the definitive go-to number 1 receiver. I can tell you, it looked like there's a definitive 1-2 punch in the receiving room, and that being Emerson Cortez Menjivar and Tony Harsty. Those two guys, they fit that same rotation I told you about, Hoffman and Cox, and that they were they played for the series, all the series that Joshua Wood was out, and then they didn't really return. But we've known for a while that Emerson Cortez Menjivar, he's looked like he's going to be like one of the top 3 receivers for a fact. Tony Harsty looks like he may. I mean, if I had to gamble on one guy leading the team in receptions, if I had to gamble today, I'd be gambling on Tony Harsty just from what I saw, the connection between him and Joshua Wood. Now, Harsty, his limiting factor, or like, hey, the reason why he's at Idaho is because he's a little bit shorter, so he's probably not going to be a go-to target on 3rd and long. But first down, second down, third and intermediate, third and short, Harsty's going to get a ton of touches throughout the season. Kind of close out on the offensive side of the ball. When the ones were playing, the O-line looked absolutely fine. Now, this is not a Montana State O-line for sure. Like, I'm fine saying that. But when the ones were playing, and that was without Nate Azzopardi, the offense had time to make their plays. Like the pick that Joshua Wood threw, that was not a pick because the O-line collapsed or something like that. The ones looked fine. And the ones, and when I say fine, I mean they looked pretty good, going against a defense that clearly won the day over the course of the entire scrimmage. So, and just a kind of interesting thing here, I'm already running out of time for this to be a Tubbs short. It's really hard to record short episodes, guys. All of the transfers from the Power 4, or if you want to call it WSU Power 4 at the time of the transfer, go ahead. But there's 4 or 3 Power 4 transfers plus WSU transfer on Idaho's O-line. None of those guys are starting, or none of those guys were taking reps as the number 1 team. And I think that's interesting for what that means for Idaho on the offensive line. I think it means that this is certainly going to be a deeper offensive line. Is there a way that the O-line is going to, hopefully improve throughout the year? Oh, of course. Because, if I preface, hey, this isn't like a Montana State or North Dakota State O-line. Obviously, there's some room to grow. But I think overall, with talking about the ones, I thought they looked better, like better enough to feel promising, like like with the ones, like a slight improvement over last season. We're gonna see what that generalizes later, but I left feeling promising about the ones. Now it's a little bit harder to compare the 2s on the O-line because it felt like defensively there's a good amount of guys defensively who are probably going to take reps with the ones, but also they played a little bit longer in practice. So it wasn't a 100% apples to apples comparison. Before I talk about the defense, got to talk about show sponsor Hughes River Expedition. If you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, do not look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been vandal-owned and operated since 1976 and are ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway, and check out special trips like the one to see the Perseid meteor shower. So grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State on these all-inclusive vacations to see the most beautiful parts of the Pacific Northwest. Call Colin now at 406-540-4450 or check him out at hughesriver.com. Last thing I want to say real quick on running backs. Eli Cummings did not get a ton of touches because he's the definitive starter, but we'll say on his kick return, he looked like he has some speed, but he looked like he had a little bit more burst than I remember from last season. And he was used as a weapon, as a pass catcher too during this practice. So essentially, like all the early reports about Eli Cummings had been like, hey, it looks like he's taking a step developmentally. I saw nothing to argue that he's taking a step developmentally today. So, I mean, that was a big deal. Nate Thomas did not play, but Art Williams got the same starter type treatment for the most part that Eli Cummings got. So I don't know if that means it's a 3-headed monster. I don't know if that means that Art Williams has like jumped a little bit further up the depth chart, but I will say Art Williams got essentially the exact same type of treatment of play for a few series, but the guy doesn't need to get tackled. Ford talked about that in his interview later on too. So just interesting development. And in the running back room, hey, if you having 3 starter level dudes is a big deal. That mattered for Idaho last season. it looks like Art Williams has taken a step in the right direction. And hey, Andy Costam, the new strength and conditioning coach, is great. That's what we're hearing. And based off the injury status, I know, hey, some of that's luck, but a lot of guys look like they're probably like Idaho. Ford says he thinks Idaho is pretty damn healthy heading into this last 10 days or so before the WSU game. Definitely a big deal with Coach Cooper in the strength and conditioning room. Now, got to talk some defensive takeaways. Defense clearly won the day. Forced a few turnovers, had a couple sacks, but honestly, if this was more of some of the backups, but there were some starter level guys playing with the backups on the defensive side, because I think there's a little bit more. I think there are more positions on the defensive side of the ball on the ones where either a position is not yet set or there's not a single guy who's going to be taking the position over. It's going to be some version of a split. So like a reference point I'm going to give you on the D line, Sam Brown, Zach Krotzer, and Donovan Parham for sure are going to be starters. And most of the time, if not all the time, the defense had four guys with their hands in the dirt, pre-snap. That means there's that the other edge was not 100% set. Maurice Himes and Matthias McLean look like the two who are going to be jockeying for playing time there, or will be splitting that playing time in some sort of combination. But I just gave you both. I say that because both Maurice Himes and Matthias McLean, they did play a bit more than like Donovan Parham, for example. I think Hayden John, number 10, definitely looks like he's a starter at safety. And Hayden John had at least a couple pretty damn hard hits. So look, we know that losing Tommy McCormick, we have that was a heavy hitter who was there for a long time. Hayden John looks more than ready to take over at least that part of McCormick's production last season. Zach Lustig also looks like he's going to be getting some time with the ones, although he did not 100% get the just play a few series and then sit out treatment that like Donovan Parham, like he for a fact did get. Some other takeaways that I like, it mattered to me to try to figure out is like, hey, how are we gonna try to figure out the corners? And Jamel Blenman, redshirt senior returning from last season, he was the only corner who got the play a couple series, then sit out treatment. He's also the one who picked off Joshua Wood's pass and took it to the house. Coach Ford called Blenman out in a positive sense in his post-game interview. Sounds like he's really taken a step forward. He is for a fact going to be, if he's not a starter, he's going to be getting meaningful snaps from day one. Other guys in the set at defensive back that for sure look like they're in the running. Hyson Dalton, transfer from Furman. He similar to what I talked about with Maurice Heim. He played a bit more than just a few series. But in addition to Hyson Dalton, Khalid Rawls got some run with the ones, but also Caleb Ricks, freshman. He was a guy who Ford referenced as making some pretty serious strides during fall camp. So that's going to be part of your secondary. I think at the defensive back, it's just not going to be, essentially, two guys like we had the last few seasons. I think it's going to be right now. I think it's going to be the four guys who are splitting some combination of the reps. Man, we're almost at 20 minutes. We are really needing to call it a night pretty soon. But at linebacker, Isaiah King did not play, which Ford's been open about that, for a while. He's working his way back in to getting ready for hopefully the WSU game. We know Isaiah King played as a starter last season. Easy guy to pencil in, but other linebackers, Dylan Lane and Will Cornelson definitely look like they're gonna get starters type of minutes. And Will Cornelson, he had some pretty heavy hits too. I guess the guys who stood out for like having some of the hardest hits of the practice, like at least for me, were already brought up. Hayden John, Matthias McLean, number 89 for sure. Donovan Parham, he had a solo tackle that I don't remember which running back that you could see why Parham is getting the role he has. And Yeah, sorry, and Will Cornelson too. So if I repeated him, my bad, guys. It's like 11. It's past 11:30, dude, and I've been rolling for a while. Cameron Pope is set to be the kicker, but he's just getting healthy. He was Owen Forsman did most of the kicking in the scrimmage, but it like Ford said in the interview, if the season started today, Cameron Pope would be playing. Most of the guys who did not suit up, it doesn't sound like we're concerned about them missing the entire thing. It doesn't sound like they have the type of injuries that would preclude playing for a long time. I will say I was a little concerned when I saw Michael Graves in street clothes because I mean we've heard that the last couple of years for sure, but I saw Graves after practice running some routes with Joshua Wood, so I'm going to presume that was a little bit more precautionary because Michael Graves could be a big deal for this Van team offensively, especially stretching the field. I said this was going to be 10 to 15 minutes, and of course it went to 22. So Trevor Junt's going to be on Thursday for us to break down the complete Idaho season. But before I call the night, I do need to be a little more definitive. Look, there's a weird scoring system for scrimmages like this, the defense to get points, because obviously like Idaho's offense is on the field all the time. The defense easily won the day, forced a good number of turnovers, had a few sacks, but like if the contact rules were not what they were, I counted probably 3 or 4 sacks that were left on the field just because the no touching the quarterback rules, meaning guys are kind of slowing down as they get to the quarterback. That itself probably eliminated 3 or 4 sacks. So what Court Denison's crew looks like they're absolutely humming. We know, obviously, like we've seen this from the EC seasons. New coach, things are changing a little bit. I know Linehan was here last year, but it's a completely new offense. Or not completely new, but so there are some things about the offense that are going to be different in a meaningful way compared to last season. So it's going to take probably a minute for those things to iron out, especially when a ton of the top guys just didn't play that much. So, like I said, we'll be back Thursday. Really, I'll be interested to hear what Trevor has to add about, talking about our season preview for Idaho, because the team, and hey, maybe these things are worth it to hear more about. This team looks like it likes each other. Like the guys like each other on this team. At least that's what it looked like in practice. There were not a ton of fights. There's absolute intensity. There's absolute physicality. But it was like this was a team that like they look like they're getting together, and they're getting together fast. Which that's going to matter. College football 2025. It's just different even with Idaho returning 56 lettermen from last season, things just change. I guess we'll spend like 10 more seconds on the quarterback and then call it a night. Holden B he had a little bit of action towards the end of practice. Rocco Koch, he was quarterback as well. He's the only quarterback who did not have red jersey on. It looks like he's going to be used probably in some interesting ways in the red zone as well. As a runner, that's a little bit of how he was used in practice today. He also had a few chances to throw the ball, but if you're wondering like, hey, is Koch a dark horse to take some move up the depth chart at quarterback? I would say that didn't really look like it. I think like it's just for like Ford's been straightforward. It is Joshua Wood number 1. It is now Sawyer Tini number 2. Looked like Nick Joseph number 3, Jack Wagner number 4, or maybe Holden B 4. I was told that kind of Wagner and B have in different practices kind of traded reps, but that's the hierarchy. There was no different like play calling for quarterbacks 1 through 4 that I just referenced, as in like, hey, last season Wagner had the offense was different with Jack Wagner in 2024. That's not what was going on at this practice. It was like the type of routes that the receivers were running for the quarterback, the type of play calling was pretty damn similar from guy to guy to guy. And if you want to play in this offense, you got to be able to hit the intermediate throw. You got to be able to hit guys down the middle. You got to be able to hit guys the sideline, those 10, 15 yard passes. You got to be able to hit running backs, short passes, get them the ball in space. And if you can't do that, you're just not going to be able to play. Joshua Wood is going to be absolutely fine doing that for sure. If he's not, I mean, I'm buying the hype on him, dude. I think he's going to be, I think you brain dead pencil him in as the top 3 quarterback in the Big Sky right now. He just looks that good. I have to call it a night. I really don't want to, but this is a short episode at 25 minutes. So for everyone who joined, thank you. Thanks for supporting the show. Patreon.com/Tubs the Club. We'll see you guys Thursday for the Idaho preview. Season is just around the corner. Go Vandals. This is producer Brian doing a
Go Vandals. Go Vandals.